All right, welcome everyone to STG Weekly, episode number 38. And this week we are covering Ibarra, the prequel to Pink Sweets. We covered Pink Sweets last week, and this game's pretty much Cave's version of a Battle Garega. So there's going to be a lot for us to cover, and it's going to be awesome. And so this week I am joined by Softdrink.
Hey guys, nice to be back on.
And also joined by Eaglet, who's on the Belgrade episode as well.
Yes, thank you very much for having me back again.
Yep. Ibarra came out in 2005 in the arcades. This game is it's got a lot of details, a lot of kind of score kind of related stuff to it. So we're gonna try our best to kind of cover everything as far as mechanics and scoring techniques go, and we will be doing so by checking out pretty much one of the highest scoring replays out there on the PS2 version, which we're gonna be eventually watching a replay by Archer, a Japanese player, and we're gonna be going stage by stage. Eventually kind of covering the various scoring tricks and kind of stuff like that.
We will ultimately be covering Archer's V7 PS2 replay. We would have preferred to do something from him that's a little bit higher, since he has done as high as a lowercase a score, but unfortunately I am not aware of anything higher than this run that's available online. Currently we have MuchiMuchiSpork's low rank clear playing in the background. I thought that would be nice to have kind of a contrast between kind of a more casual way to play the game versus score play run that we're going to go into a little bit later. So,
right. So, yeah, Ibarra. So where do you guys want to start with the discussion about this game? You want to talk about the history about Ibarra, or wait, I forgot what you had in mind.
Yeah, sure. So my understanding of kind of the history behind Ibarra is basically. Rising's shooter division was kind of collapsed after the company merged with Aiding, although I could be completely wrong about that. And then at that point, Yagawa was approached by Ikeda from Cave and basically asked to join the Cave team. And many people have claimed that Ikeda just outright asked him to make Battle Garega, but for Cave. And
I
so
think Yagawa himself has even said that in an interview, so that seems to be the case.
Yeah. And then Ibarra ultimately resulted from that process, and you can clearly see that in the game. I mean, in many ways, it is a spiritual successor to Battle Garega. There's so many similarities that it's kind of hard to know where to begin, but
yeah, I suppose like the main Cave thing, very initially about it is that you have the colored bullets, and then that kind of Cave signature. But behind that appearance, it's very much so a game where you're managing rank, right?
Yeah, you're managing rank, and you have bomb fragments, and there's all kinds of secret bonuses and destructible background items, and tick damage and boss milking becomes critically important to scoring, and scores are measured in letters at the higher levels of play once you pass 9 million points, and
you get an extend every 100 million points.
Yeah, it's the only way to lower rank is to suicide. So there's a lot of kind of tie-ins to Garega, and even some of the bosses are designed in a similar way. So like the first boss is it has some nods to the first boss of Garega. And the stage 4 boss of Ibarra has some nods to Blackheart, and there's a lot of kind of moments like that.
All right, so I suppose as we go through the episode, we'll probably reference kind of how it differs from a Battle Garega type of thing, and probably the other kind of Rising rank games. This game is gonna fit in, right? But despite it being a Cave game, and it's developed or programmed by Yagawa, so
yeah, it very much feels like a Yagawa game. It definitely is not something that a Cave player would typically feel comfortable with, and I think that has a lot to do with why it didn't do so well in the arcades. Is that people, it's like, oh, it's from Cave, but then it doesn't play like a Cave game at all. So,
right. Okay, so Yeah. So why don't we just start out with the kind of the basic mechanics and work our way from the ground up into what to expect when we're going to watch this game, and keeping in mind that I do have that footage, kind of just regular footage going. So
Yeah. So it's
items and the I guess the extends and then
yeah.
everything. So
Yeah. So it's fundamentally a two-button game. You have A button for shot, B button for bomb. If you just like in Garega and many of the other Yagawa games, if you rapid tap the shot button and then hold it down, you can set your auto fire rate, and you can only increase it, not decrease it. Unlike Garega, if you die, it does not stay increased. And that's actually critical to note because that means that you can use the higher auto fire rate for scoring purposes, or to help take down an enemy without necessarily compromising your rank for the rest of the game.
okay,
For bombing, if you tap the bomb button, you will release a bomb. You can do that provided you have even just a single bomb fragment. The duration and power of the bomb is proportional to how many fragments you have in stock. However, if you have a full bomb stocked, like 25 fragments or whatever the actual number is, you can also hold down the bomb button and charge up and then release a Hado, which is basically a missile which carries behind it a trail which will cancel bullets into low value point items, roses, which are worth I think 200, 400, or 800 points, and will defeat enemies as they fly into it and damage bosses continuously.
so very useful, and that costs a
Yep.
whole bomb,
A full bomb,
a full
yes.
bomb, right?
It's incredibly useful for survival purposes.
Yeah, even in this footage we're looking at here, they're using it right in the center, of the screen near these trains, and he's just like hiding in the middle of it basically, and
Yep.
it kind of works as like a barrier, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Provided you're in the center of it, you can't be killed by anything, provided it's a bullet. You can still be killed by collision with enemies, so you have to be a little bit careful. But and actually, it's not. There is a section of the game where enemies can fire instantaneously once they're spawned in stage 5, and if you place the Hado wrong, you can actually have enemies firing at you. And before the bullets are considered canceled by the game, they can technically hit you if you're right on top of them. But it's a very low frequency thing, and for the most part, you can consider it kind of a safe zone once you place it on the field. The most useful thing to keep in mind about bombing and using the Hado is that most enemies in the game will drop items if they're destroyed with a bomb, and those can be power-ups, options, or point items. And so to maximize score, in many cases, you will be bombing or using the Hado to destroy popcorn enemies so that they will drop items on a continual basis.
That's
and
very important, right?
it's
Yeah.
it's very, 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 very important.
That's one of the key things there. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
And also, the item drop rate is actually the same as in Garega, whereas an enemy will
Yep.
drop a shot icon and a point item after that.
Every
Shot
like
icon,
5
yeah.
destroyed enemies or so, something
Yeah,
like that.
I
if you're
think
if you're not
that-
bombing them, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
But the order in general is like shot, medal, then I think it's option, shot, medal, and so forth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And then it will, once it hits a large shot, it'll loop back around.
Yeah.
You want to talk about the weapons now, or
Yeah. Sure, why not? So the ship's main shot is powered up by shot items. I don't remember how many levels there are explicitly, but there's 4 or 5 actual power levels, and
Okay.
then if you pick up a small shot item, it'll increase you part of the way, and if you pick up a large one, it'll increase you the whole way between one level, just like in Garega.
okay,
And then for options, there are several different kinds of options. There's a rocket launcher, homing missile, Gatling gun, machine gun, flamethrower, napalm shot,
yes, and these options make the
and
game.
a 5-way.
These options make the game pretty unique, don't they? 'Cause
Yeah.
we haven't really seen. A cave game, or even Battle Grega didn't really have a weapon system quite like this, huh?
Yeah.
No.
Not at all.
Yeah.
So the thing with the options is that you can have three of them at one time, and they're equipped on the sides and rear of your ship.
I can
And
see
depending on your ship type, which you select at the start of the game, and I'll go into that in just a sec, you can fix the position of your options by holding down the fire button. And so what that means is if you like move to the side, normally they would follow your movement. But then if you hold A when they're, say, at an angle to your ship that you like, then you can keep them at that angle until you release the fire button. And that's
Gotcha.
actually a critical technique for some parts of the game. It's absolutely essential for keeping your metal chain going in, for example, the Stage 5 open.
Wow.
So knowing when to fix your options and how to use the fact that you can do that is absolutely essential in some places. So
that's wow.
then there
I didn't
are
realize the option positioning was that crucial.
it can be. It's
It
not
can be.
always, but
Okay.
it can be.
I see. I
Yeah,
see.
it's
Something you kind of work on as you play. I
Yeah.
guess. Okay.
the same as when you're playing Garaga at a high level as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It becomes very important, but initially when you're starting to play the game, you can just kind of let them do their thing.
Right. Gotcha. Sure.
Then the other thing with options is that there are special option formations, just like you'd see in Garega or in the other kind of bat games. The difference is that they function a little bit differently, and so you have things like wide and like lock on where they automatically aim at enemies, but they're triggered in the same kind of way by picking up like an option after missing 5 bomb items or whatever, that kind of thing. I don't
Yeah.
remember all of the
There's the various conditions to get the various formations
Yeah.
after a certain time.
Yeah.
Like it's pretty detailed. You kind of gotta look that up.
The main difference though is that depending on which formation it is, it might only affect one of the options at a time. So, for example, the lock-on one will only affect the option that you pick up when you trigger it. And you can see that kind of right now in the replay where you have like one or two of his options are locking onto the boss, but the other one's just kind of shooting off into space.
So you
So
really
if
have a
you
lot of
wanna-
versatility with kind of how you want to set up your options.
Yeah, but other ones, there's kind of a rolling mode in this too, where they just kind of spin around in a circle, and I think that one does it to the ones that you have currently, and it's just not, most of the special option formations aren't really useful in Ibarra, with the exception of the lock-on one, because since you can fix the position of your options wherever you want, you can kind of control the screen very well without needing a wide formation, for example. So only the lock-on one really becomes important at all, and even then you can kind of avoid it altogether, although it is useful, especially in some parts of Stage 4. So
Okay, sure.
the other thing that absolutely warrants mentioning is that there's a special ability that the ship has, which isn't really explicitly mentioned at any point. It's the aura flash. And this occurs, basically it's a small white flash around your ship, which does massive amounts of damage. It's the equivalent of picking up, of dropping a bomb, but it has almost no range at all.
Okay.
It's only slightly larger than the size of the ship's sprite. Now, that happens automatically whenever your power level increases, whenever you drop a bomb, whenever you arm a Hado, whenever you earn a full bomb, or whenever you pick up a new option. It's important to make that distinction because if you pick up the same option type, it won't happen.
You
So
get
a
10k points
very
instead.
powerful short range attack, you say?
Yes, and it can be exploited to great effect when scoring because it has the exact same effect on enemies as if you were bombing them, and it does just as much damage as a single full bomb would. So you can use it to, for example, deal massive damage to bosses, or in Stage 1, destroy the warehouses containing metals instantaneously.
So this is like a free form kind of freestyle bomb, basically, which you can use short range.
Yeah, and you can use it
if you're
provided
feeling,
you have
if you're cheeky, if you're playing like really cheeky.
Yeah. And it's essential to higher level scoring play. It's also very useful for survival purposes because it can cancel bullets, but again, only in a very, very, very short radius.
So I imagine we're going to be seeing like this technique used a lot then.
Yes, especially in the Ibarra
Absolutely.
run, the Archer run, excuse me, you're going to see it all the time,
Yep.
Yeah,
and
that sounds
it's
pretty good.
it's critical to higher level play. And it can get you out of some nasty situations. For example, remembering that you can arm a Hado to cancel some bullets is very very valuable technique, and the timing is a little bit tricky to get right. But you'll see that the Archer, for example, will use that on several occasions to prevent himself from getting killed. So.
And that's
Yep.
something, yeah, we really need to know about that. It's not something we're going to be able to actually see without knowing type of
What's going
things. It
on?
seems
Yeah.
so. Okay, all right,
One,
that's okay. Go ahead.
sorry, one other really quick thing to note is that
Feel free.
the Hado, when you shoot an enemy with it, an enemy that isn't instantly destroyed by it, the missile will stick on the enemy, and it'll create a small aura around it,
Okay, we're seeing that
like
right now,
circular
actually.
field. Yeah, you're seeing that right now, and
Yep.
that does more damage if you're not shooting at the boss. Um, and
really?
I'm not really sure why. I think it has to do with the way the game is programmed, such that it like calculates damage based on what is occurring at the time. So if you're shooting, it would calculate the damage based on your shot hitting it, and that would take
Yeah.
priority over the bomb. But that's just a guess on
That's
my part.
Yeah, I think it's the
Basically,
same thing as in Gariga, because that's like one of the things that people will notice when they're trying to score and bombing the birds, for an example, that you usually
Yeah.
get more points if you're just bombing and not shooting at the same time, because your shots will override the damage from the bomb.
yeah. And so that's important to know both for scoring and for survival purposes, because if you want to quick kill a boss, it's more effective to do so with a Hado if you're not shooting, which is very counterintuitive for a lot of people. So
Okay, yeah, that's kind of a weird thing. That's definitely worth mentioning.
yeah, and then kind of one final thing, you can select between different fighter types at the start of the game, just kind of like how you would in Garega by pressing different button combinations when you start. The key
Yep.
difference is that, unlike in Garega, you can't choose between different ship types. So there's two different kinds of ships. That are determined by the player character. If you're playing on P1 side, you play as Bond, which is the red ship, which is what we're seeing in this replay and will be seeing in the Archer run. In general, the Bond ship it has a more straightforward shot as opposed to a wider one. It has a more forward thrown bomb, and it's faster. By contrast, the Dine ship tends to have a wider shot, move a little bit slower, and have a wider ranged bomb.
Okay.
And you play as Dine if you're on P2 side. Then between those two different ship types, there's also different types that you get depending on which buttons you press when you start the game. So if you hold down if you don't press anything other than start, you play as A type. If you hold down the A button while you start, you play as the B type. If you hold down the B button while you press start, you play as the B type. And if you hold down A and B while pressing start, you play as the D type. And I believe the Archer run here is equipped with the D type.
Yeah, it's a
D-type
D-type.
is usually D-type bond is usually used for scoring purposes, although not explicitly in all cases, but usually because it has an instantaneous bomb in all cases. So that's
Oh
very
wow.
useful as opposed to a like the napalm style bomb that you would often get with some of the other ship types here.
Oh wow, that's a
Yep.
pretty big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's also
So,
a very fast ship.
Yes, which
So
can be very
it's-
useful.
Yeah, you could say it's a bit like the gain of Ibara, if you're, like relating it to Gariga. Yeah.
And yeah, definitely. Icarus brought up an important point. If you hold down the buttons for too long when starting, you will, drop a bomb or launch a Hado at the start of the game, which you don't want to do. So it's even at the very start of the game when choosing your ship, it's kind of already trying to trip you up. So,
Yeah.
and then the different ship types determine other things too, like which options you can lock. So, for example, the D type can only lock the rear option, whereas I think most of the other types can lock the two side options.
Wow.
So that kind of thing. So there's a lot of kind of intricacies to how the system works, and there's a lot of little things like that that you kind of have to keep in mind.
Which is typical to the Rising games. I mean, you
Yeah,
usually have
very
the
much.
the A, B, and the C types and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You really gotta know about that because no one else is really telling you. Game's not really telling you. Like,
No, not at all.
I guess in Grega, when you did the alternate types, it would actually change the ship, didn't it?
Yeah, change the color. Here, there's not even that. They're
Yeah,
always
right.
the same visually. It's just they control completely differently. So
Yeah, but it's a pretty advanced game.
yeah,
From what we've seen. All right, so that's pretty much That sounds like that's pretty much the majority of the gameplay mechanics. So I suppose we could go into rank management.
yeah, okay,
Talk about that a little bit, and it's a big preface we got for this game. So
yeah.
bear with us, folks.
So very much like Garega, pretty much everything that you do in the game will increase the rank. Shooting increases the rank. Pressing a button increases the rank. Surviving increases the rank. Bombing increases the rank, and picking up medals increases rank, as well as powering up and picking up options and all that kind of good stuff. The only way to decrease rank is to die, and your rank will drop more significantly based on how many lives you have in stock. So if you have 2 lives in stock, it'll drop by however many points. And then if you have 1 life in stock and then you die, it'll drop by twice as much. And I'm making these numbers up, but that's the basic gist of it. And so if you're trying to play for rank management purposes, what you would ideally want to do is only ever have 1 life in stock and suicide down to no stock right before you get the next extend. Every single time.
And I just restarted the replay, and he does that. Or this guy, the guy who's playing here actually does that immediately. MuchiMuchiSpork. So
yeah, he actually doesn't need to do that right here.
No.
He was kind of misinformed when he was recording this. If you're playing for score, it's very important that you suicide right away for reasons that we'll get into a little bit later. Okay. But if you're just playing for survival purposes, you actually don't need to do that. It is important that you suicide eventually before you get an extend, but you don't want to necessarily get yourself killed right away. So
is this a case where? Go ahead.
Yeah, because the rank starts at the lowest possible value, so there's you really don't gain anything at all from decreasing it at the start.
Right,
yes.
And as you go through the game, it's always increasing and increasing.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you're at more than 2 lives, is the rank increase from everything you do greater? Is that why it
no,
gets
but the
worse,
rank,
or is it just
the
because
rank
you have that
decrease from death is so much reduced when you have more than 2 lives in stock that it's almost insignificant.
So it's just it's just no reason to really have those extra lives in stock. So it's meant to be played.
Yeah.
With the 1 life in stock.
Unless you want to do some specific scoring tricks and use all your life for that trick.
Okay, sure. We'll get into that.
There's in fact, just like Garega, it's absolutely critical at the higher levels of scoring to max the rank before entering the final stage. So, and Icarus, we'll get into that before we start the replay. The other thing to keep in mind with rank is that, like I mentioned earlier, you can increase your auto fire rate, and it will not have a permanent effect on rank, and your auto fire rate will decrease again when you die. And that's really nice because it lets you have some flexibility with regard to, I need to speed kill this boss or this mid boss, but I don't want to have the whole rest of the game the rank increase. No, it won't do anything. I mean, next time you die, it won't matter. So. Yeah. Plus, the rank increase from increasing your auto fire rate isn't nearly as severe as it is even in Garega. So even though it's not a permanent thing, even on that short term, it's not as dramatic. That said, it probably shouldn't be done willy-nilly. You should have a plan for when you increase your auto rate, or it will eventually come back to bite you. So.
Okay. What else about rank management?
Well, like I said earlier, picking up medals increases rank, and there are some significant points in the game where that can become an issue. I don't know if there's the kind of hump that you have in Garega where the first, 100, 200, 300, 400 value medals are much worse for your rank than the rest of them are. I don't know if that's the case in Ibarra. What I do know is that very high-value metals will increase your rank rather significantly if you pick them up very quickly. And there's a situation in
Really?
Stage 5, the metal waterfall, where you can get literally hundreds of metals in the span of just a few seconds, and it can absolutely wreck your rank, even though it's wonderful for score, if you aren't on top of it and aren't controlling rank well at that point. So.
Would it be better if is it better if the metals are actually floating on the screen for a while before you pick them up, or is it just the fact that you're collecting them in a row very quickly?
I don't know enough about how the system works to make that call. I just know that section of the game can ramp up the difficulty very significantly, very, very fast. So.
Okay, so yeah, grabbing the big metals is dangerous still.
Yeah. And playing the game for score will almost always have high rank after a certain point, because you have to do things like bomb constantly in the first 2 stages to pick up a lot of metals. So bombing increases rank, picking up metals increases rank, that kind of thing.
What are the things that kind of increase the rank the most? I mean, we went over having the life stock, but I mean, what are the main things we should be kind of watching out for or avoiding? I guess everything. I mean, it's because what I'm asking is one thing weighed more than the other?
I think bombing is.
Bombing, okay.
Yeah, I think bombing is.
Yeah. Ironically enough, I think bombing is kind of the biggest one.
Okay.
But I mean, realistically speaking, nothing that you do will increase the rank by a huge amount. Oh, excuse me. Kempot brought up an important point here. If you pick up unnecessary options and weapons, it will increase your rank, and it increases by the same amount as if you fired a bomb. So that has the same kind of cumulative effect as bombing a lot would.
Okay, that's important then. Okay, sure. I've heard the flamethrower is really bad for the rank, and the rockets. Is that true?
I think that's mostly suspicion. I don't know if that's been confirmed, but the theory is that higher damage weapons do more quote-unquote damage to the rank, which would make sense. So the rockets, napalm, and flamethrower are the most powerful weapons in the game, and it would make perfect sense to me if they would increase the rank much more than any of the other option types would.
Okay, yeah. Not completely certain, because when I was playing, my friends were like, "Oh, you got a rocket? Oh, you're fucked." I guess I should just mention real quickly. Yeah, you get both of you have a pretty decent experience in the game, but I'm pretty much a noob, so I'm trying to just follow along here. I've only played it probably a handful of credits, so
yeah.
Just as a little note there. All right, so we've talked about. Do we have a decent idea of the rank stuff now? I mean,
I think we're mostly covered.
So pretty much, everything you do is, affected. Bombing is one of the main things that increases the rank. Possibly collecting the explosive weapons, the rocket and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe increasing it quite a bit. And then most
don't pick up things you don't need. Very very much like Orega.
Yeah.
There's kind of a zen feel to the game. You take only what you need.
Right. So
and
leave
everything
the concept
else.
remains. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's very much still in play. However, for scoring, again, if you pick up a weapon power-up when you already have full strength, or you pick up an option when you already have that option, you will get a 10,000 point bonus, which is the same as the highest value metals. So, like I said before, the game very consciously wants you to max rank as you play for score. And so there's kind of a definite trade-off between survival and simple rank management versus scoring and more complicated stuff. So, and Chempop, I don't believe stockpiling bombs actually has a direct effect on rank. Obviously you'll use bombs more quickly if you're not stockpiling them. So my suspicion would be that stockpiling them is actually a better way to play it if you're just going for survival.
Wow. Okay, cool. All right. So that's okay. Rank. Could we get into some of the basic things about scoring, and then I guess we'd kind of be ready for these replays, which we're going to be watching the stages over a couple times.
Yeah, sure. The main thing with scoring, as kind of mentioned before, is that most enemies in the game will drop an item if destroyed with a bomb or the Hado. That applies to pretty much all the popcorn in the entire game. And the most significant thing with that is that since the drop order is, basically every other thing that is dropped is going to be a medal.
Yeah.
If you're on top of it, you can ramp up the medal value very, very, very quickly to 10k by spamming bombs on the correct, enemies in stage 1. And then once you're at that point, by bombing and using Hados on aerial enemies, you can get a lot of medals from that throughout the course of the game. There's also some very specific points where you want to be bombing certain ground targets. For example, throughout all of Stage 1, the warehouses and factories on the ground can be bombed for large amounts of points. I think they're worth something like 10 to 50 times as much when you bomb them as they are if you just destroy them with shot.
And that's pretty much that's been something that's pretty true through the other Rising games, right? Is having specific targets.
Absolutely.
Having more points gained from destroying them with a bomb, or either your shot or your option shot or something like that. But usually it's like you get more points for bombing stuff in general, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I would say that it's much more consistent in this game in that pretty much every static ground object nets you more points if you bomb it.
Really?
If it's not a a flying enemy, it's pretty much guaranteed you'll get more points from bombing it.
And then some objects are going to be worth more than others too, right?
Bombing. And then there's also some objects which will contain metals. And so, for example, in Stage 1 you have warehouses which contain 16 metals, and in Stage 2 you have oil tanks or something that if you bomb, they'll spew out 10 metals. The important thing to note about the way that the game generates metals is that it always generates them sequentially. And that sounds like, okay, why do I care? But it's really significant in cases where you have one enemy that drops multiple metals, or one structure that drops multiple metals. Because if you sit on top of it and collect the metals as they appear, it will instantaneously ramp up your metal value.
Kind of like in Raiden Fighter's Jet with them sitting over a Meekless. I guess
exactly.
Compared to that.
Yeah, sure. That sounds very similar. Yeah. So like those oil drums in Stage 2, if you sit directly on top of them when they're spawning those 10 metals, you can go from no metal value to like 3,000 instantaneously. So if you drop your metal chain, there are a few places in the game where you can exploit that behavior to really ramp up your value quite quickly.
So is there multiple kind of metal fountains then like that throughout the game?
There's a lot of them in Stage 2, there's a few of them in Stage 1, and there's a few of them in Stage 5 if you know exactly what you're doing.
Cool.
But for the most part, you want to have a consistent metal chain throughout if you're going for scoring.
Right.
Because once you drop it, it's relatively easy to stay down, simply because the game has a way of dropping metals one after another in the later stages, which make it much more difficult to ramp up the value. And unlike Garega, the metal value will not increase until every single metal that is on the screen has been collected at that value. So, for example, if you have a bunch of 1,000 point metals, even if you destroy a completely new enemy in a completely new way, which in Garega would count as a different metal wave, quote unquote, and would increase the value, here that's not the case. You have to collect every single 1,000 point metal before it'll give you a single 2,000 point. So.
Okay.
And there's also a ton of boss milking in this game, and that's where the majority of the points come in at higher levels of play. So the Stage 2 boss, Stage 3 boss, and Stage 6 boss in particular are where most of the points come from, because they have, in the Stage 2 boss's case, it's very much like Earth Crisis from Garega, where I believe that's the name, the Stage 3 boss, where you can sit on top of it and shoot it to do lots and lots of tick damage and just let it time out because it has no means of attacking you. With regard to the Stage 3 and 6 bosses, they both have lots of popcorn enemies which they will continuously release at a very high rate. And if you use Hados on those, you can get tons and tons and tons of medals and power-ups, which will give you, on average 10k each.
Would you say that this tends to be a theme too in the Rising games, or the Yagua games, where the bosses tend to be a really big point gain too with the techniques you use on them? Because I've
Yeah.
been playing Batrider, and that's definitely the case in that game as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The thing is that I think it's kind of exaggerated to the extreme in Ibarra.
Okay.
I think
But with the Hados and
it's
stuff like
about
this.
a
Yeah.
15 million point game if you don't milk anything, and you score well through the stages. But it's a 36 million point game if you milk bosses. So the majority of the points in the game can come from the boss milking, and in particular from the stage 3 and 6 bosses. So it's really kind of taken to the logical extreme there.
So 36 million. That's like a world record type score, isn't
That is the world record. Yeah, it's
Okay.
lowercase a.
Just so we kind of clarified that.
Yeah.
And then of course the in all the Rising games you got like letter scores once you get up to 10 million, and then it kind of goes to the alphabet up to 20 and 30. So
Yep.
and then so it's where we have this guy who had the lowercase a, which means he went all the way through the alphabet
Once, yeah.
once.
And then there is also an extended mode in Ibarra. I have never seen a clear of it. That about sums that up. I believe it's been done, but it's unbelievably difficult, and I have not personally seen much development on that front. So,
That reminds me, one of my buddies telling me what was it? I think it was Pink Sweets, the loop, or something like that. The guy who was trying to beat it said it was just straight up impossible. The extended mode, so it's kind of crazy.
I would not be surprised by that, given that it's Pink Sweets. So
It's kind of crazy how crazy the rank can get in these games, and then how impossible it can pretty much make it, because the rank, like, if you don't know any of these things we were talking about and you're just collecting all those power ups,
you're like, oh, this is just
the
a
game-
normal shmup, and then suddenly it becomes completely impossible to beat.
Suddenly you're flooded by bullets and you die, and then you die again, and then you die again. So
Yeah. One other thing to mention, there's not really any popcorn in a traditional sense in this game. Everything has a certain amount of health. Nothing is technically destroyed in one shot. So at higher rank, you can have popcorn enemies that will survive, 2 or 3 hits, and it becomes, like you see in other Yagawa games, like in Pork, that becomes a big thing later on. And so that can become very, very challenging once you get to higher rank, when suddenly even the easiest enemies in the game aren't going down right away. So
right.
and then there's also a line right underneath the insert coin line, similar to Garega, where enemies will take an absurd amount of damage before they'll die.
Okay.
Yeah, they won't even be damaged.
They will be damaged. It just takes forever.
They will be.
Yeah,
All right.
the stage 4 boss, for example, spends most of its time up there, and you can still destroy a lot of parts of it when it's up there. It just takes forever to do.
Interesting.
All
So
right.
that ends up being like you're getting the tick points at
Yeah.
that point.
Yeah, and if there's any popcorn up there, you're like, oh, I can just go up there and destroy them. No, won't happen. So you have to be and Icarus, there's a dead zone on the sides of the screen where if you use a Hado, enemies will not drop items. So any enemy that would normally drop an item that's on the extreme left or extreme right edge of the screen, once you've scrolled it out there, will not drop it. And that becomes important with regard to milking the stage 3 boss in particular. Yeah, and it only affects popcorn. So.
And I believe we tend to see the enemies don't shoot you from off screen either. Right?
They don't usually shoot from off screen, but they will shoot very unpredictably when on screen, especially at higher rank. And the game does wonderful things, like the stage 5 boss will actively dodge your Hados if at high rank. So it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing.
Yeah. It is kind of fun in the Rising games to see just the high rank, just to see what happens, because oftentimes, there's new bullet patterns, there's different behaviors by the bosses, right? And it's like curiosity killed the cat type of thing right there.
Yeah.
For good. But yeah.
All right, so that about wraps up what we have to say before we go into the replay. And sorry for the long delay there, guys, but there's just a lot to talk about.
Yeah,
Ironically, before we start stage 1, a couple things that I did want to mention very briefly. So, Aquas, if you could start getting that queued up, unless you have something else to say, Eaglet.
yeah.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Oh, sure.
I think we should get started with the first stage here because there are a lot of things to explain. So
Yeah. In scoring runs, they'll suicide immediately at the start of stage 1, and there's a couple reasons to do that. First of all, if you're playing stage 1 for score, you'll have over 2 million points by the stage's end. That means that you'll extend at least once during the middle of the stage. If you extend and get 3 lives at that point, your rank management is already looking really bad because you have 3 stock and you haven't even beaten the first stage yet. So it's actually important to suicide at the start of stage 1 so that you can suicide at the end of stage 1 so that you can decrease rank. So you kill yourself so that you can kill yourself. It's also very significant to do because it increases your bomb stock. When you die, you get half a full bomb.
Yeah, that's...
And since you start the game with half a bomb, that gives you a full bomb that you can use to use a Hado immediately. And that is a very good way of increasing medal value. And what you'll see in this run is that Archer places it near the rightmost edge of the screen. The reason he does that is to draw the enemies into it one at a time so that he can collect the medals on an individual basis. What you don't want to have happen is have all the Zako come in there at once and then they all drop a low-value medal. Then that Hado will persist on screen long enough to destroy many of the buildings that are over on that side, which are otherwise tricky to destroy with your bombs while you're otherwise exploiting the stage. And it will dissipate before it gets to the first metal ramp warehouse, which has 3 small metals that you can pick up to build up your chain quickly. The other thing that's significant about that suicide initially is that it lets him physically ram into a lot of the enemies right after he dies before the invincibility period times out, which gets him, several medals up to, I think, probably 400. So it's not a huge advantage. The other 2 are much more significant.
And the reason that he rams into the enemies is mostly because you get powered up since you're staying at basically 0 power. So for every power level you power up and every option you pick up, you get an aura flash. And that aura flash brings out more items and more medals so you can increase it quickly while you're invincible.
Yep.
All right, so we'll be watching out for that for sure. With try to keep all these things in mind as we watch these replays. It'll be great. This replay. Cool. All right, should we get into it finally?
Yes, we should.
All right, awesome. That was basically an awesome audio commentary guide to Ibarra. So now we're actually getting into. Well, it had the footage going, so I think that was really awesome, though. I think we actually made a lot of sense out of the system, and I think it also applies to a lot of the Rising games as well. So maybe this will satiate people a bit more as far as Rising explanations go. Because I know it's a big mouthful. I mean, it was 40 minutes to explain, kind of all these different things. So now we'll begin into the actual true replay, boss. Now, cue that up.
Yep.
Quality will be a little bit lesser than the footage we were watching. Okay, yeah, this is freaking out. But okay, give me a moment. But yeah, quality is a little bit lesser on this video, so, but I think we should be able to discern what's happening. Alright, I just gotta recapture this.
And again, this is Bond Type D.
Okay. Yep. Yeah, any other prefaces of the replay would be great right now.
Okay. One of the things you'll see happening a lot, especially in Stage 1, is using bombs on small groups of aerial enemies, maybe 2 or 3 at a time. And again, the reason for that is that the drop order is basically every other or every third enemy that's killed, you'll drop a medal. And so if you kill 2 or 3 enemies at a time, you can very precisely meter how much you're getting dropped at one time. So you can pick up exactly 1 medal and then destroy more enemies, pick up another. It's a great way of building up the medal chain very rapidly.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, so we're gonna have to really we're gonna be watching these stages probably maybe a couple or 3 times over just to make sure we kind of understand some things that are going on because it's gonna happen so quickly, right?
Maybe. I mean, I think maybe only Stage 1 and 2 we might need to rewatch, but we'll see.
All right. Well,
there's some boss tricks we might want to go back to later on, but whatever works.
All right, we'll see how it goes then.
Yeah.
Great. All right, cool. I got it queued up finally. Okay, I'm at one. Come on. Oh, I'm on stage 2 here. Let me get that stage 1 going. All right. Trying to, duh. You do it. Oh, there we go. Okay, I got it 0. All right, great. Okay, here we go. Bajillion letter score by Archer. Let's check it out. All right, I'll do a countdown. It'll be 3, 2, 1, click, and we'll get into this first stage. Well,
Yeah.
I'll make the countdown just 2, 1, click, so we can save a second every time.
That's a good idea.
All right, 2, 1, click.
The point on the screen at which he suicides is actually important because it determines how the enemies behave once he dies. If you're too low down the screen when you commit suicide at this part, they'll move in a slightly different pattern, which makes it more difficult to ram through them and metal up in this early section.
Okay, and then right away he used that the technique, the aura flash, right?
The aura flash, yeah, to pick up that metal right away. And then here he has it over on the side there. Now he's immediately bombing ground targets. That warehouse he just destroyed carried 3 metals. Remember, game creates metals sequentially, so he's able to build up the metal value 3 steps right there. And again, bombing pairs and triplets of aerial enemies here.
Just he keeps on grabbing the little fragments and then just keeps bombing over and over.
Yep. Ideally, you play the first stage without shooting at all until the boss.
It's really?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yes. It's a lot of fun once you get to that point. It's bomba! Bomba! Bomba!
Yeah.
That is awesome.
And ideally, of course, you want to raise your medal value to the max before you get to those huge warehouses.
Before you hit the first warehouse there, yeah. And
Yeah,
he's already
exactly.
extended once. He's at 1.3 million.
I always like it when there's a lot to do in the first stage of a shmup, so this is like...
Yeah, I think
you know.
I think that's one of the biggest improvements they made in Ibara as opposed to Battle Garaga, because in Garaga there's pretty much nothing at all to do except just
Yeah.
getting regular items and shit in the first stage. But here you're constantly trying to just gain points and stuff.
Wow.
Important to note that he intentionally gets only machine guns before going into the boss. If you have anything more powerful than a machine gun, like a rocket, for example, which is very easy to pick up by mistake, you risk accidentally destroying parts of the boss too early, which is very bad.
Yep.
Here, what he does is suicide right away because he knows he's about to extend, then suicides again right before this glider drops off, and then picks up an option on top of it using the aura flash to kill it, which when you use an aura flash or a bomb to kill that glider, it gets you an extra 50k. So now he's going to disassemble the boss piece by piece, similar to how a score player would in Garega against the first boss, because it gets you much more points.
Yep.
So he's avoiding like a certain part of the boss then?
Yeah, he's avoiding the center.
The center, right, okay, yeah.
The center of it is what's actually the boss, proper. And if you destroy that, then the whole thing will go down. Right now he's concentrating on dealing roughly even damage to both wings. The idea, once you deal a certain amount of damage to the boss parts, a Gatling gun will come out of the center. The idea is to take it down kind of as much as you generally can before that happens, because it starts constraining how you can move around.
Okay, and there it is.
Yep.
Yep. And here he's just doing lots of chip damage in addition to blowing off those pieces. So, because he is already at 2.3 million, which is very, very good.
So he's getting the tick damage now that he just actually destroyed those parts of the wings. They're just the husks of the wings, basically.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Um,
That's something you see in like the Rising games a lot, is that tick damage.
yeah, absolutely. So, and now that he's destroyed that Gatling gun, it starts shooting these volleys of swords. Again, very much like the first boss in Garega, which starts shooting these kind of offset volleys of bullets once you get it down to the last piece. Then he's going to get directly on top of it and use a Hado Aura Flash to destroy it, because you get many more points for killing it with a bomb, and the Aura Flash counts as a bomb. And he's leaving with 2.6 million, which is an excellent Stage 1 score.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Okay, alright, So should we watch that one more time here? Or should we go stage 2?
I think we're good though.
Oh, we're good?
We
cool.
actually, yeah, we were pretty on top of that.
Alright, right on.
Yep.
So.
Alright, cool. Let's go to
Stage two.
right to stage 2 then. There we go. Oh, yeah. Alright, you guys ready?
Just 1 second. Crap.
Yeah.
Need to get it queued up here. Sorry.
Yeah, so we got all these stages in separate videos, so bear with us here.
Yeah. All right. I'm good to go.
Okay, cool. Stage 2. 2, 1, click.
So here, that initial Hadou that he held from the previous stage is really important. That initial positioning, use it to take out those enemies that are coming in and gets lots of medals off of those. Plus, it starts taking out the silo, which will drop a lot of medals as well. This thing where he takes off the wheels of the tank, that's pretty much something you'll only ever see in a super play because it's really impractical to do. Basically, if you take off all the wheels and then destroy the tank, it'll drop 4 medals instead of just 1. But either way, if you destroy it with a bomb, it will drop a full bomb in the center, provided that both of the turret guns have been destroyed first. And so that's how he's continually able to get full bombs in this stage, is just by using that technique on all of those large tanks. So
He's got a shitload of points near the top of the screen there. What happened?
he was sitting on top of 2 silos as they exploded.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
This section right here is incredibly difficult, where these enemies are coming under the tunnel here. If you're trying to play it for score, it's very easy to accidentally die there if you don't have it very well routed. So
Yeah.
these enemies here, regardless of how they're destroyed, if they're destroyed at the right time, which is when they're going under that arch, or in this case around that pole, they will always drop items.
Oh, that's really awesome.
Yeah, and that's crucial to know at the higher level, because it's an easy way to get a lot of points without necessarily even needing the bomb. So
It is cool that you see a lot more of the bombing in this game, because the fragments are just everywhere. So it's like, it seems like it's really taking advantage of that bomb mechanic in this game.
yeah, absolutely.
Because I mean, you see that in Garega and Batrider and others, but not through the whole stage.
No.
One thing that's super important if you're going for score is trying to come into the stage 2 boss with a flamethrower on one of your option slots, because they get the most tick damage. And during the 3rd phase of the boss, if you're going for the milk, it's absolutely essential to kind of maximize the tick damage you can deal. The other thing is that you'll see him suiciding intentionally against the first couple forms of this boss. Super players treat every form of this boss, other than the last, as essentially a race to get to the last form as quickly as possible. Since you can use options, and each when you die, if you pick up an option, it'll cause an aura flash. If you're doing that on top of the boss, you can deal huge amounts of damage very, very rapidly by suiciding at the right time.
Yep.
Here, what he did was use that aura flash from the Hadou to destroy those 2 side turrets, which you very briefly could see coming out of the boss. And now it's been rendered completely harmless, so he can sit there and deal tick damage to it with his auto fire maxed until it times out.
And those flamethrowers are really nice for the tick damage, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why you want to use
I noticed
that.
it's increasing in bursts there.
Yeah. Extendo.
Extendo.
5-minute
But
milking.
as you can see, no, it's gonna be sitting there for 3.5 minutes.
Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah.
So a little bit more background about this boss, since we have some time now. The Stage 2 boss in Ibarra is known for being ridiculously difficult. It is usually the point of the game at which people who are playing for the first time, if they're good at shmups, will either get to and then die, or they'll get to after a little while of practice and they'll be like, how the hell do I beat this? The main thing with it is that it's kind of a test of your ability to play the rest of the game. If you come into it with enough lives, you have no problem whatsoever. If you learn its attacks and how to avoid them, you have no problem whatsoever. It's entirely possible to get through it without missing at all. In fact, it's not even an incredibly difficult boss once you understand its basic patterns. But things like the way that it opens with that set of blue needles that comes down to either side of you and corners you to a very small path. If you're not used to Rising games, if you're not used to exploiting the whole screen, you'd never think to go behind the boss and avoid that. So it's kind of the first big wall of the game, and many people have criticized it for being way too difficult for the point in the game at which it is. So I'm not sure what I think of that. Personally, I like it. It's kind of a fun boss. It's an interesting break from the rest of the game. Those first 2 stages are really hectic. And then once you start milking this boss, you just kind of get like a nice 2-3 minutes to just relax and kind of zone out and prepare yourself for the rest of the game.
Right. So how difficult is it to like do that first part? How he did, he went over those parts and he did a bomb, and then like the options dropped from the parts. Is that's what happened, right? And then because of the aura flash, he ended up killing it off pretty quickly.
The timing is everything with that.
Okay.
Basically, the boss has...
it happened so quickly.
Yeah. Basically, the boss has 4 forms. The first form is that little capsule that jumps up and flies around, and you can avoid that by going behind it. The second form is the kind of wing-shaped thing that pops up and starts shooting the balls at you, and that can actually be very tricky depending on how you take it, but mostly it's just about cutting back across the screen. Then the third form is where that trick starts coming into play. So you have those 2 large flamethrowers at either side of the boss. What you want to do is destroy both of those, and then it's often recommended that you destroy one of the rear capsules. There's kind of 4 rear capsules on the boss during that form. If you destroy one of those, usually you'll do enough damage to the boss that it's easier to kind of take hold of. But what you don't want to do is destroy the shooters that fire 3 bullets at you from the kind of center. So then you want to destroy that section of the boss, and right after you destroy it, she'll scream. And if you time your Hado just as she's screaming, you'll usually destroy those 2 side turrets that start unfolding from the boss. Basically, the important thing to note here is that the boss is in the process of transitioning between 2 forms. And if you destroy it right as it's unfolding those turrets, it will prevent it from firing at all with the third one that starts to come into play. And I'm not sure whether that's intentional or not. Given the fact that the game is such an homage to Garega in so many respects, I wouldn't be surprised if it was intentional. But it's definitely tricky to do, and the timing is everything.
And what you got to be real careful about later on when you trigger that specific form is that you stay lower down on the boss, like right next to his big shield. Because
the shield is indestructible, but the wheels are not.
Exactly, and you'll damage the wheels. And if you destroy like, I think it's 2 or more wheels, 2 wheels, then the boss will just stop and start timing out, and you'll miss out on all the milking you could do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of just like replaying that first part of this boss.
Yeah.
Just to reiterate.
Yeah.
So basically, what he does with those first couple forms is actually suicide, so that he can kill them as quickly as possible. And then he immediately gets right up and destroys those flamethrowers on that third form. And then you see he just sits directly... Oh, you just restarted.
Yeah, I'm restarting it from the beginning.
Okay.
One now.
Yeah.
So yeah, this first form here, he actually just loops around this one. But you'll often see people suicide to this one so they can kill it right away. Here he just has powerful weapons and he has auto max, so he kills it very, very quickly regardless. But then he suicides immediately when he starts the second form, and positions himself so that all of his options will fall kind of directly on top of it, so that he can use the aura flashes right away.
Okay, so when he dies, and then that's like a lot of aura flashes, right?
Yeah, it's like 4 or 5 aura flashes right away, and so it can pretty much instant kill that part of the boss.
I wanna watch
and
that.
Here
Yeah,
he just destroys that middle segment, stops shooting, moves down, auto, then immediately starts milking the shield. And yeah, Icarus, we mentioned that it's important to come into the boss with 1 flamethrower, but we didn't explicitly mention that it's ideal to have 3 during that last form. Again, the idea is to maximize tick damage, and the flamethrowers do significantly more tick damage per second than the other options you have available at that point. So.
Yep.
It's so cool how you use the aura flashes from the death.
Yeah.
That's
and
really
again,
neat.
that's a technique you'll see a lot in higher level play.
Like it makes the death, like the suicide, that much more, like kind of meaningful, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it makes your recovery so much more aggressive as well. It's like, you just get up in top of that boss's face and just, flash him to death pretty much.
Yeah, it's like I may have died, but now I'm going to use my clone's power-ups to fuck you up.
Yeah, still gonna kick your ass.
The thing to be careful of is even if you come into the fight with a flamethrower, when you die, you'll always drop, in addition to whatever options you have right now, you'll always drop a large power-up and a machine gun. And if you have 3 options, what that means is you'll drop 4 option power-ups. You'll drop whatever you have right now plus 1 machine gun. So if you accidentally pick up that burner first, or you miss it and pick up only those 3 machine guns, then you don't have the burner going into the 3rd form of the boss. So that can...
you gotta be careful how you grab the power-ups.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. That's an awesome boss. Alright, we should stage 3 time?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Alright, cool. Let's queue it up. I kind of like what we're doing here is kind of revisiting the bosses. I can just replay those and we can talk about what happens.
Yeah.
Because I think that was... Because these bosses seem so important, so I kind of like that. Alright, cool.
Yeah, they really are.
Cool.
Alright. So stage 3 here. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, right. I don't think he bombs one single time.
Wow.
No, he does. In stage 3?
He does? Yeah.
Yeah, he uses a Hado at the beginning here, he uses one in the middle, and he uses one at the end.
Yeah, he uses the Hados, but he never bombs. That's
he never bombs.
Difference from the previous stages.
Yeah. You start seeing the game really changes in kind of pace at this point. So endless train, yes.
Awesome.
Endless train.
Yeah, this has definitely already opened my eyes to this game. I definitely want to play it again with my buddy's PCB.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
But before, I was doing stage 1. I was just like shooting stuff. I'm like, oh, it was a great shmup. I was shooting.
Shoot.
But now I'm going to be bombing the first stage, so it's awesome. All right, cool.
Bomba.
Yeah, indeed. All right, so here comes the countdown. 2, 1, click.
So here he's going to be luring these popcorn around the screen for a little bit, and then he's going to use the Hado to destroy them all at once and pick up a bunch of items here.
Nice.
For lower level play, I would actually recommend that you hold on to that Hado until you get to the middle of the stage, because there's a part where 2 trains come on at once, and it's very easy to just use it there, and it helps clear the screen a little bit.
Yeah.
So. This is the part of the game where you start seeing his rank management come a lot more into play. You see that he's already doing a lot of strategic double suicides to get himself down to no stock right before he extends. So unlike the first 2 stages where you really don't have any breathing room at all, here he really makes a point of using the fact that the game is a little bit more, not relaxed, but there's a little bit more freedom in your route to go ahead and suicide. So. This mid-boss is kind of tricky. Its second form here, there's 2 options for it. It can either shoot these lances in pairs, or it can shoot 5 balls in a spread. And
it's fixed pattern as well.
What?
Fixed pattern.
Yeah, the spread pattern is fixed.
Yeah, and the spread pattern is fixed. It doesn't turn. But the boss itself moves around as well. So it can be tricky to deal with that. To kind of you have to learn both of those attacks and learn how to deal with them and be ready to adapt. And that's one of the things that I love about the game, actually, is there's so many situations once you get into the later stage of the game where there's just a lot of random number generation that comes into play, and you really have to be ready to deal with whatever it's going to throw at you. So, again, very reminiscent of something you'd see in Garega. So, here he's going to use a Hado in the middle here on that center train. That just helps clear things up. It makes it so much easier to survive this section. With no slowdown like this on the PS2 version, and in MAME there's no slowdown as well. It's very difficult to deal with that section. Even if
I do remember there was a lot of slowdown when I played on the PCB there.
Yeah, on the PCB it slows down quite a bit. So it doesn't really make a meaningful difference as far as scoring goes, because there's not that much you can do in that particular point.
Yeah.
To
maximize.
Just
starting out, it's nice.
Yeah, definitely.
To have that kind of breath.
So. And now Kasumi. First form of this boss here is very much dependent on rank at the time. How many of her attacks she pulls out at once is entirely dependent on the rank value, and it can be incredibly difficult to deal with if you have the rank too high. So
I see.
Here he uses that Hado. He fires it just before that nose section of hers gets destroyed, so that it only damages the center of the boss. And then here, like I was saying earlier, a little Zako that it shoots out. So see how he's shooting that Hado not quite at the edge of the screen?
Yeah,
If it were
yeah.
all the way over, they wouldn't be dropping anything at all.
Oh, okay.
And
That's
so
that's a really
that's
good
that dead
really
zone.
good point there. Gotcha.
It's critical if you're trying to milk this boss that you be aware of
I
that.
suppose you notice if you
Yeah,
if you did.
yeah.
So
It's like, what? There's nothing dropping.
Yeah.
You'll see this goes
I've
on
had
for a
that
couple of minutes
experience.
like this. Every volley he does like this gets him almost 350k.
that's amazing.
So it's a really easy way of ramping up your score. Well, I shouldn't say easy. It's a really quick way of ramping up your score if you can do it. But it's actually very difficult to properly execute. The fundamentals are really simple, but it gets very challenging to handle because the boss's movement is very randomized. And the other thing to keep in mind is that since you're constantly gaining a lot of points and picking up a lot of items very, very rapidly, you have to be suiciding every single time you extend, or rank will start going through the roof.
All right.
Oh, that's an excellent tip, Icarus. I didn't even know that. He says that if your option is off screen, it means that you're in the dead zone.
Okay. Nice.
That's actually really helpful. I personally don't milk the stage 3 and 6 bosses yet. I don't feel like it's worth investing in that until I've cleared the game. But, yeah.
But you must score to clear.
Yeah.
or something.
Well, no. You can definitely play low score, low rank.
Oh, okay,
but,
sure. Cool.
I personally don't find the game to be very fun at all at low rank. So
Yeah, okay, sure. I've been enjoying the aggressive play.
yeah, it's very, very fun to
That's,
watch. Here the boss is timing out and it has a kind of a hakyo, like a lot of Rising bosses do, where right before they're about to die they go crazy and start shooting out tons of stuff.
Fun stuff.
If you position your Hado correctly during that part, you can get a lot of points very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there anything else we need to cover there? Or do you think we got it, Eaglet?
Yeah, I think that was it pretty much. Because, I mean, the boss is like with the previous boss, it's all about raising it until you get to that form where you could just milk all the Zako enemies.
Yeah.
And then you just gotta keep up with it and, get the execution down so you don't kill the boss too fast or drop a medal or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. So.
Yeah, we kind of saw the technique there. Cool. All right, so
Yeah.
move on to stage 4.
Yep.
Awesome.
An important thing to note about Stage 4, there's large flying platforms in this stage, which are worth a lot of points, and they're worth significantly more if you kill them with bombs. However, it's very important to be careful when doing that because... Oh, excuse me. You need to go into Stage 5 with enough bombs stocked that you can survive. And there's a crucial trick that you can do early on in Stage 5 where you can turn one Hado into 3 by destroying some tanks correctly. So it's important to leave Stage 4 with enough bombs that you're comfortable both dealing with Shasta and dealing with the Stage 5 open. And that can be something of a task. So.
Well, yeah, they'll definitely come with experience, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
Ugh. All right, cool. All right, I'll do countdown. 2, 1, click.
So the open here, he basically just uses this for score. That Hado lets him pick up a lot of medals and items right away.
Yep.
And if you need to suicide right away in Stage 4, that is actually the best way to do it, is to use a Hado so that you can keep medals raining down, and then kill yourself while the Hado is still on screen because it'll keep the medals dropping. And then once you come back, you have a lot of points that you can pick up right away.
Do you have to worry about the medals dropping if you have a Hado going and getting medals when you die?
You don't need to worry about them dropping provided there's still enemies on the screen. If there's still enemies coming onto the
'cause
screen,
the medals
you're
are still
virtually
there.
guaranteed that there will be more medals falling. But if you die when there aren't things
Right.
that are in play to keep medals falling, it'll be
Right.
quite an issue.
Right.
Against this mid-boss, you can see how high his rank is because the spreads are firing super quickly. Normally they're much more spread out than that. You see he destroys these turrets that are shooting the spreads and then uses his rear option, which he locks in position, to point blank and then destroy those saw blades that come out. It's not really essential to do that, but it does get you a bit of a score boost. I think they're worth 20 or 30k each, plus they drop a bunch of medals and items. So then here for
5 medals
even
in one option.
yeah, here for even more ridiculous point milking, he takes off these small turrets individually. You don't need to do that. If you want to get the extend on this boss, what I would recommend is just taking off the wingtips. It's really kind of more trouble than it's worth to deal with all those little turrets. But so the other thing is, even though in the last couple stages you've seen how valuable it is to use Aura Flash on top of the boss, don't do it here, and that was exactly why. You see that crazy sword, like, fuck up right there, just like that gigantic clusterfuck of swords that came raining down.
Yeah.
That's really, really difficult to deal with. So if you use Aura Flash on this mid boss, it can cause that to happen prematurely, which can be incredibly difficult to deal with.
Right.
So
the timings.
Yeah. Then here he's using the Aura Flash from the bomb fragments to instantly kill a lot of these enemies.
Nice.
It doesn't make a difference in their drop order, but it does help because they have a bit of HP, especially at higher rank. So.
Yep.
Now you'll see he starts stocking bomb fragments. Even though these large platforms are worth a huge amount of points if they're bombed to death, it's not really worth it at this point because you do need to have some bomb stock going into stage 5.
Once those are those.
Yeah. He also gets one of the special options, I think the lock-on option at some point in here, which kind of happens almost by accident a lot on this stage, since to get it you have to drop 5 bomb fragments and then pick up an option. And this part of the stage, it's very easy to have that happen just by coincidence because of the fact that those carriers carry a bunch of bomb frags and then themselves carry a rocket
It
option.
extends so often.
Yeah. It's an incredibly fun game to play at the higher level because you extend constantly, you're dying constantly, and the rank is really fucking high. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen one of the Rising type games where you just die as often and score so much. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, Valgrega is probably the other one that I thought.
I want
He
to point
did that a
something
lot.
out here because that was ridiculous, what just happened. He had like all the bomb frags he needed but one, and he picked it up at just the time under some shots, and it built up a full bomb, which then activated the Aura Flash, so it canceled the shots he was about to run into.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of ridiculously high level stuff that's like, you could never plan that, but the fact that he noticed it and was able to act on it is just ridiculous. So,
Nice.
and now Shasta, one of my favorite bosses in any shooting game ever. The whole fight is kind of reliant on randomness. She has a few types of attacks that she can use, but their order and their position is always different every time. Basically, there's 3 slots on each wing that can have one of 3 different kinds of weapons. There's these bombs that she shoots, which then fire radial spreads of swords. There's shooters that fire small rows of purple bullets, and there's missile launchers which shoot large linear missiles. And those can appear at any of those 3 slots on the wings. So you have to be prepared to adapt to them at whatever position they come to. In this first form, she only ever uses 2 of them at once. And your goal in this first form is basically just to destroy the propellers on top of the wings, because in the second and third forms, those will start shooting blue spreads at you, which can get very, very frustrating if you don't deal with them. Second form, again, there's some randomness involved. These 2 tail turrets can either be twin turrets like this, they can shoot rows of single shots, or they can be these spinny guys, which are absolutely horrible, which shoot spirals of twin bullets. On their own, the spinnies aren't that bad, but if you get 2 of them at once, it's an absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
It is possible both to destroy those propellers on her back and to bomb them out of existence. So you can actually skip this form altogether, but it's not recommended that you do that because, again, it's important to preserve your bombs for stage 5. And you see through this boss fight, he's basically just milking tick damage as much as he feels he needs to. It's also worth noting that the missiles that the first and third forms of the boss shoot, that explode into swords, if you destroy those, they're worth 5,000 points each. However, if you destroy them, they shoot swords.
Right.
So milking the sword bombs is a very kind of risky technique because on the one hand, it can get you a lot of points, and on the other, it can fill the screen up with so much shit it becomes completely impossible to do anything. So one very good piece of advice that I got a while ago when I was first struggling with this boss is when she starts shooting sword bombs and shit gets hairy, don't shoot.
Yeah.
And it seems really counterintuitive because it's like, oh, if I, it's a boss, I got to be shooting, I got to take her down quicker. But each one of her cycles is only, a few seconds. And so if you can just last that time without shooting, it actually opens up quite a bit.
Yeah. Worth noting about that blue spread flamethrower that she's firing is that it's unlike in Garega where the Black Heart's Vulcan cannon is firing in a specific pattern. That blue flame is just aimed directly at you, and it will continue to follow you in a speed relative to how fast you're moving. So just slowly tapping will get you out of the way completely.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And this boss, on the whole, is very reminiscent of Blackheart, both in the fact that a lot of its attacks are randomized, and in the fact that it uses things, like the spread shot that moves around the screen and forces you to be, well positioned. So, and it's on the cloud stage. So.
And of course, the primary milking that you're doing is just shooting the wings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I've been getting acquainted with Blackheart. It's a bitch. It's a bitch, man.
Yeah.
Not even the real one. Well, the Bat Rider one.
All right. Yeah, well, both of them are easier in Bat Rider than Garega, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you're probably noting, this fight can take a very, very, very long time. There's kind of two significant reasons for that. One is that this boss has a huge amount of HP, even at low rank, and the other, and of course that increases at higher rank because your shots do less damage to enemies. And the other is that it spends most of its time really high on the screen. And remember that things that are above the insert coin line take much less damage. So the boss spends the majority of its time at such a huge height that it's very difficult to deal a lot of damage to it. So, and here he actually just times it out.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. All right.
So this opening section of Stage 5, like I was mentioning earlier, is a really kind of a crucial point in the game. It's very, very, very easy to drop your metal chain right here. What'll happen is that these three large platforms will come down, and the first one comes down in the middle, and then there's a bit of a pause, and then two come down at once from both sides. And all three of them will drop a medal. So the way that they shoot makes it very difficult for you to move around the stage, so you have to approach it with a plan. Usually the way to do it is to kill the first one right away, pick up the medal, then lock your option at a slight angle so that you can kill the second and third ones by starting at the far left edge of the screen and slowly tapping over to the right. By doing that, you can dodge the shots and then take them out one at a time, which lets you collect the medals. But it can be extraordinarily difficult to execute properly. So.
Okay. Okay. All right. We shall start the stage. 2, 1, click.
So here's the first platform. And now he locks his option at a slight angle over to the right. You see here's the one platform comes down, he kills it, waits for the medal to come down, collects it, moves over, and takes the other one. Seems really simple, but in practice it can be very, very demanding.
Yeah, it looked pretty busy there.
And then this opening part of the stage, there's going to be 3 tanks that come down kind of right from the left edge towards the center, and then they loop out. He's going to drop a Hado right there. Then he's going to position himself over to the side and take out the wheels. And just like in Pink Suites, if a tank rolls over another tank, it'll destroy that tank. So by destroying the wheels, he's able to get those tanks to drop not only a full bomb, because they no longer have anything on their turrets, but they'll also drop 10 medals each.
Oh, wow.
That'll spew out from that central position. So if he sits directly on top of the tanks, he can collect those 10 medals right away. So in that one section there, he just got 300k, just by positioning his Hado and himself correctly.
We didn't see
But
that
it's-
because he was hovering over, though.
Yeah, and we just can't see any
Yep.
of it. But if you watch his score counter, it flies up during that section.
Yeah. What-
But again, simple in concept, very hard to execute correctly. And now the
Yeah.
Metal Waterfall.
Yay!
Yay!
So this section, you basically just Hado on the side and sit and get a fuck ton of points.
Yeah.
Wow.
But
Yo, damn.
again, the rank flies up during that section, and it can be tricky to deal with this coming section here as a result of that. So, and then again here you see him lock the option off to one side so that as he moves around, he's constantly damaging things which are a little bit away from himself, so that he always has somewhere that he can move that's going to be safe. Again, just that option locking becomes a very conscious part of the gameplay later on, like this.
Yeah, this is getting really busy now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Normally what you'll do for survival is use at least one, maybe two Hados in this section, but it's crucial to save your Hados for the boss here, Lasse, because she's an absolute bitch, and because you need as many as you possibly can get going into Stage 6. Here he'll drop the Hado immediately to kill these 4 towers, but he keeps shooting because he doesn't want to kill this form of the boss yet. He actually milks the boss for graze points, believe it or not.
Yeah, here.
And he keeps that turret alive. I was always wondering about this. He keeps it alive so he can time it, so that he still manages to get the destruction bonus for the first form of the boss, but he knows when to stop shooting.
I can see how small the hitbox is.
Yeah. I don't know if rank decreases by grazing in this game as it does in Batrider, though.
I don't know.
No?
That would be interesting to find out, but I have no idea.
Yeah. We should have Trap on here, honestly.
We were going to, but he never showed up.
Yeah, I know.
Trap 15, if you're watching this, we miss you, man. So,
He's not watching.
yeah, I know. I know.
I like how the turret on the left was just like, didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this phase of the boss, you dodge mostly by circling around it, and then during this dual radial by hopping up in very short increments with taps.
Nice. That's tricky.
At higher rank, these attacks will come directly on top of each other if you're positioned wrong, so it can be virtually impossible to dodge.
Damn.
It's also worth noting that it's entirely possible to skip this phase and the final phase of the boss with use of a kind of a glitch with the missile launcher. But excuse me, the Hado. But I'll talk about that in a second.
Okay.
Now, this final form can be ludicrously difficult. It has an attack, the blue needles of death. Anyone who's played the game to get this far will know exactly what I'm talking about. But basically, it's a bunch of blue needle spreads that come from 3 different points on the boss very, very rapidly. He lucks out here. It never shows up. The only real way to deal with it is to destroy the side turrets, which you can kind of make out that he's doing here. They're dropping options right now.
Yeah.
The only way to deal with that is destroy those side turrets and hope that she doesn't have time to start using that attack before it shows up.
I see.
Because once it does, the only way to dodge it is by doing incredibly tight circles directly on top of the boss.
Oh, weird.
But you can see that he keeps a Hado armed for the entire fight, just in case she pulls it out and he needs to deal with it.
Oh, right. That's the Hado armed. Yep.
Yeah. That's the nice thing about the Hado is you can keep it armed forever. As long as you don't release the B button, it never shows up.
Yeah.
So, and then really quickly touching on that glitch I was mentioning, there's a thing which may or may not be a glitch per se, where the missile part of the Hado can actually travel between the hitboxes of an enemy with multiple parts. So you see this a lot in Stage 6 against the mid-boss. You'll see in this replay he explicitly uses it to instant kill the mid-boss because the mid-boss is hella annoying. Did Eaglet just drop out?
He's having some. Looks like he sounds like. Yeah. Eaglet, yeah.
Anyways.
You're breaking up. Okay, maybe I'll recall.
The second and third forms of Lasse here actually have 2 different hitboxes, and if you fire a Hado on the leftmost edge of the third form, just as it's separating from the second form, the missile will continue traveling through both of them, like instead of sticking to the boss, and will deal a huge amount of damage, which can be often enough, especially at lower rank, to kill the final form outright.
Alright, we're gonna try to get Eaglet back. He's having some issues.
Yeah, I wish I could explain that better, and I wish there was a video to show you what I'm talking about, but I've never actually seen it recorded.
Eaglet? Yeah, he's... Oh, boy. That's awkward. I hung up on him again.
Aquas, you dick.
I didn't do anything. The chat saw the dicks, calling him a duck. I mean, it's not very nice. Crunch. Anyway, yeah, so I just replayed that. I'll replay the boss again. Maybe we'll wait a little bit for Eaglet till we start the next stage. Oh wait, I'm on stage 4. Go to stage 5 again. It's fun to watch these bosses.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
There we go. Okay, he's back.
That was me, Kempop. I'm like, oh, there's a break in the commentary. I'm just gonna eat a cookie.
It's yeah. Interesting you can figure out that it's a cookie. I'm not sure what to think about that. Alright, try to get him back in here. Call, add people. Alright, gonna bring him back. Hey, what up? Come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah, I fucking hate my connection over here.
Holy shit, that was amazing.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Alright, so what did I miss? Except for me sounding like a fucking duck.
No, not really. We're waiting. We're waiting.
Alright, sorry to keep
I
you guys
was talking about the missile instant kill trick, which,
Oh, yeah.
like I said, I've never found a replay of, but I've been able to do it a few times myself. So it definitely exists. It's just hidden. I don't know. Magic.
Yeah.
That's too much. Alright, well, are we ready for last stage then? 9 minutes?
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Ready?
Hell yeah! Right.
Alright, let's do it. Alright. 2,
Like a duck.
1, click.
Boom.
So, as mentioned before, to score well, he's going to want to max the rank as much as possible by the end of this stage. And to that effect, you'll see that he's, ramped up his auto-fire rate. You'll see that he's actively going to be collecting pretty much everything that comes onto the screen.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah, but the thing he's not going to be doing much of is bombing, because you want to preserve as many Hados as you possibly, both for scoring purposes and for survival. Even at low rank, it's an incredibly difficult fight, and often you need to bomb or Hado just to survive.
I see.
But at high rank, it's absolutely critical, because scoring for this depends entirely on how many bombs you have in stock. So,
Yep. It's basically the
he's,
same deal as, in Garaga, where you have the Blackheart Mark II fight at the last stage, where you want to keep as many bombs as possible.
yeah, same basic
Yeah.
idea.
Yeah.
Because it's based on the boss, spewing out things that you can destroy, and the higher the rank, the more it shoots.
Right,
So.
right.
Yeah.
You'll see he already has maximum possible Hado stock. He has, 4+1+1. So he has 1 armed, 1 full one based out of fragments, and 4 full bombs in his gauge there.
Oh yeah, you can see the bullets going a bit faster.
Yeah, you can see it starting to pick up. And it gets nightmarish in a few seconds. Or once he gets past the mid-boss is when this stage really picks up. So,
Yep.
Nice.
Mid-boss is a real bitch.
unless you instant kill it. If he he puts that Hado right between the wing and the body, just as the boss is transforming between a flying ship and a walker. And like I said before, if you shoot right between hitboxes, the missile can continue straight through the boss, and when it does, it deals stupid amounts of damage. So he's able to completely kill it right away.
That's cool.
Yep.
You see that a lot in higher level play. of this game, like if you watch like any streaming runs, because I've seen a few, you see they do that a lot because it really just becomes an absolute nightmare to deal with that mid boss. So.
I see. You want to slip that in there.
Yeah, it's just like fuck you, I don't care.
Yeah.
So yeah, this late section of the game here, of the stage, you see again using that option locking to take out things on the side of the screen. And then here he uses the Hado flash to kill that flamethrower burst just long enough that he can shoot over and grab that metal to keep his metal chain from dying, which was incredibly cool. When I first saw that, I was like, what? So, yeah. Basically here all he wants to do is survive, because if he dies, his rank will drop, and then he won't be able to score as well against the boss. So lots of bullet hurting and cutting back across streams.
This music sounds great. Man.
Yeah, Ibara's soundtrack is awesome.
Yeah.
Doctor.
Lulin Kutaha, or however the hell you say your name, no, this is not the world record, but it's close-ish.
Yeah.
This first form, he's going to shoot the Hado right then, because it will instantly kill most of the turrets around the outside. And if you look carefully and notice that this first form of the last boss is very reminiscent of Madball.
Yeah, it's Madball.
So, yeah. With, well, on crack, but...
It's got thorns like a rose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thing.
Yeah,
Here comes the bill.
kind of a theme with this game there. But... Alright. So here, the boss is going to start shooting out little minions, and every single one of those that's destroyed by the Hado trail will drop an item.
Yo.
And so he's constantly going to be
Holy shit.
Hadoing, constantly going to be Hadoing and picking up those items.
Yo. It's a metal salad. Or a item salad.
And again, he wants to try not to hit the boss itself, because he doesn't want it to die just yet.
Shit. Never put roses in my salad. Alright, I'm done. Damn, dude.
And
This
the
is
metal
insane.
chain will remain, provided that he dies during the duration of the Hado for the reasons we previously discussed. So,
Yo.
he's already at an O score. I mean,
Reminds me of
look at
Pink
this
Sweet
shit.
Range. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. So is this the biggest point gain in the game?
This is the biggest point game in the entire
absolutely.
game.
Yeah.
And it's
bet.
incredibly easy to do in theory. The problem is that to do it at its optimal level, you have to basically max the rank of the entire game, starting from about stage.
Like petals come out or whatever.
Yeah, way more of those guys come out at higher rank.
Right.
If you play this game normally, you can see gaps between them.
Oh wow. Okay, gotcha. So it's like this. It's for this technique.
Yeah, it's explicitly for this reason that he is maxing the rank as much as he is.
Ugh.
Yeah.
But I
And
mean,
you can
look at how
also
much
see
the
that-
score has increased.
Yeah. And as you can see, because of the rank is so high, the pedals, they take a lot of damage before they die, and that's why sometimes he gets killed even though he's standing right inside the Hado trail.
Yeah. You can see some of them even just make it right through. If you look at the edge of the screen, you can see some of them just slide right on by. So now he's starting to care about killing the boss a little bit, so he's suiciding enough to get himself a Hado, and then he's going to pop it directly in the face of the boss, which he can still milk for tons of points because it's still going to be shooting out lots of those little guys. But at this point, he's like, no, I don't really care about the score that much. I just want to live.
Yeah. Actually dodging it. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember, he's died enough times by now that their numbers are starting to dwindle significantly.
Oh, yeah,
so
right,
It's
right.
becoming much more playable.
Oh wow, that's really cool.
And then the boss is over.
Wow.
Complete.
That's it.
Damn, man.
Complete.
That was like the most epic
Yeah.
boss melt ever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fucking ridiculous. So, yeah.
Nice.
That's it.
Complete.
So we got a V score.
Yeah.
So it's that like I can't count letters and numbers. It's I don't know, something. It's like 27.
Should be like 31 or something, right?
Um, 32, I think.
Yeah. All right.
Wow. Well, that was sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's Ibarra. It's fucking crazy. So, and again, the world record for this, set by the same guy, is a lowercase a score. So he gets a full, what, 6, 7 more points than 7 more million points than this. So, it's
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Yeah.
yeah, and this version is, a lot of people were really bashing on it when the port came out, because it's like, oh, there's no slowdown. Like, how the hell are you supposed to play this game? So Archer was just like, from my understanding of this replay is that Archer basically was just like, shut the fuck up, guys. You can still score this game, and
Yeah.
he posts this online with a crazy, crazy score just to prove that it's possible to do. So
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't seem, that the slowdown didn't seem super important.
yeah, I mean, there's definitely a few places where it helps.
Probably helps. But
Stage 3 with the trains, it helps. Stage 5, there's a little bit of it, which can make some parts a little bit easier.
I mean, if you're
But overall-
that guy, though, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Overall, it's not really. It's not really worth complaining about. I don't think.
You know who does this soundtrack for this one? Is it Namiki?
No, it's Shinji Hosoe.
It's
Yeah.
Shinji.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Shinji Hosoe does a lot of shmup soundtracks.
Yeah.
In the past. This must have been one of his most recent compositions.
Thank you for your playing. I love that.
Well, Back to Dragon Spirit he did, and a lot of them.
Oh yeah.
Look at that scoreboard, man. God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, I think pretty much covered it. Yeah, I think it was a really good episode. Really covered the basics in the beginning, so I'll probably end up, kind of just in the description, I'll probably just say, we got the explanation at the beginning, and we got to go into the replay about 45 minutes in, but
Yeah, maybe put timestamps for that.
yeah,
So.
it really helped to understand kind of what's going on. The whole all the bombing for extra points, and the uses of the Hadoken, the rank management, all that stuff. It all comes together into a really satisfying experience. It seems like, and I really enjoyed how it does end up being played very aggressively, and
Yeah.
I really had no idea it was played like that. I mean, I never really checked out a replay myself, so.
Well, like I said, I mean, unless you're actively looking for it and watching, streams online, there's really not that much available for this game, which is part of what's so frustrating about it. There's a lot of discussion about it. There's a lot of, a lot of interesting stuff in the strategy section of Shmups, for example. But there's not a ton of like visual documentation of what you're supposed to do. And there's some things which you can do which aren't documented at all that I'm aware of, like that instant kill trick against Lasse. So it's really kind of a comparatively unknown game, which is a shame because it's a fantastic game. In my opinion, it's quite possibly the best shmup I've ever played. So
All right.
yeah, it's just so much there. There's so much depth to it. I mean, I feel like I could keep playing it forever, and I would always be learning something new. So,
Do you feel like this one has the most depth of all the Rising or the Yakuza style games?
I don't know that I'm really qualified to make that assertion because I haven't,
Sure.
I haven't tried Batrider Advanced or Bakrite Advanced, or I haven't cleared Garega yet. But there's definitely just so much here, and it feels like, to me, it feels like Garega, but there's just so many fine improvements to it.
It feels like there's never really a dull moment as far as the scoring goes.
There's never a dull moment.
Yep.
The scoring's really interesting. Even just surviving can be very interesting in the later stages. I mean, I've done pretty well with this game. Like I have a very decent score. I have a C5, which is pretty. I'm pretty okay with that. But like I haven't cleared it yet, you know?
Yeah.
I've gotten to the last boss. I have seen her start to explode, and I haven't cleared yet. And it's just one of those things where it's like the fact that I'm still playing this game and still loving it and still, you know, going back to it. And every single time I learn something new. It's like, even though I haven't cleared yet, I'm just like, you know what, this is too fun to ignore. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I personally wouldn't say that it's like the most complex or deep Rising game. I would give that to Batrider Advanced because of all the possibilities that you have, both in terms of scoring and team setup and bosses and stuff like that.
And all the secret stages and everything. Yeah.
But this definitely qualifies in, I would say, the most complete system of any Rising type game because it's very consistent in the way that you gain points and what you do in order to get points. Yeah. Like using the Hadougan to spawn more items and, I don't know, like bombing in the first couple of stages to raise your medal value and get more points out of buildings and stuff like that. So
yeah, I think that's a good word to describe it is consistent.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Like consistent action, basically. It seems like it's very much so like very action-oriented kind of shmup, which, you know, it's kind of weird to use that term, but, you know, it's just like it's just because you're being so aggressive and you know, the explosions are just, you know, they're really animated. That's kind of one thing that was hard for me initially with the kind of a lot of the Rising games is because the shrapnel kind of blends in with some of the bullets, especially in Battle Garega. Kind of hard to get over. So it's kind of nice to see it in Ibarra. They did end up bringing, you know, the kind of colorful bullets. I know Battle Back Raid, I think, has the pink bullets. You can actually change the color of the bullets in Batrider if you want to, but
you can do that in this as well.
Oh, you can. Cool.
Yeah,
I love that.
in the PS2 port, there's some settings for it, and I think in the PCB you can either do it in test mode or in special version or something. There's a way to change the bullet color. I personally don't bother with it because I like the default colors. But the other thing with this game is there is so much going on, and there is so much. You know, even on the PCB, the visibility is not the best. And you know, it's better. It's definitely a lot better than the PS2 port, but it's definitely not the best. So it definitely takes a lot of getting used to. And the player movement can feel a little awkward at first. I remember the first time I played it, I was like, "What the fuck is this? This feels terrible." And now I'm like, it's like my favorite game ever. So you know, it grows on you definitely.
What ended up attracting you to this game, Eaglet? I guess.
Yeah,
I'm wondering.
I would say that first of all, I was like interested in it because I liked Garaga a lot, and I heard that this was supposed to be like a spiritual sequel.
Yeah.
And when I played it, it was primarily the initial difficulty that got me attracted to the game because it was way harder from the get-go than anything I'd played before.
Gotcha.
And that's just made me keep at it and, you know, continue onwards. And then when I discovered how you're supposed to score, especially in the first couple of stages, just bombing everything and raising the value as quickly as you can, it just, I don't know, I got kind of addicted to it, and that's the way it's been since then.
It's good to have an exciting first stage to kind of get you hooked in, especially once you know how to play it.
Yeah, as I said, I think that's one of the best improvements that they made in this game over Garaga.
Right.
That you're immediately, like, right on top of the action, and you're just doing stuff constantly, and there's so much room for improvement and stuff like that, as opposed to just riding along and, I don't know, waiting for better things to happen.
Right, yeah, I guess that's kind of how it is sometimes.
Yeah.
Cool, well, I think we pretty much, you know, mentioned most things. I guess as far as playing the game, you know, there's the PS2 port. You can try to get it going in MAME, not really guaranteed there. You need a good computer, you need a special build of MAME called Slowpoke MAME.
There's a couple other builds that will work, but I've found some success with Slowpoke. My advice for it is, you know, it'll work, but it won't work well, and save states will be really fucking glitchy. It'll be hilarious. Like you'll often load a save state and it'll load the wrong tile set. For a different level, and so you'll have all kinds of weird like graphical glitches going on. Like I was once trying to do save state practice in it against the stage 3 boss, and I ended up with this weird like Technicolor like Dreamland background. It was just the most wonderful thing. So I would recommend just trying to play it, the way that you would an arcade shmup. Don't use save states. Just try to play it end to end, and usually it'll work just fine.
Yeah.
The PS2 version can also be emulated, but that takes an even more powerful computer than it does just to run the game in MAME.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really offer any advantage over just playing the game in the PS2 version or in MAME. So
but yeah, hopefully someday we'll see another port of this one.
That'd be wonderful.
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, let's not get into the kind of a discussion about Cave at this time, but
yeah.
Hopefully, there's an easier way to play it, because it seems like, it's definitely one of these games that has a lot going for it. But thankfully, we have all the other Rising games, which we can spend plenty of time playing and getting better at and enjoying. So, there's always something to check out in the shmup world. So,
one other thing we should probably touch on very briefly is there is also Ibara Kuro, Black Label.
Oh yeah.
Which I don't, we obviously don't have time to go into a full replay of it, and frankly, I don't understand it at all. I haven't had time to sit down with it yet, but from what I've heard, and I played it briefly. I played it in the arcade actually. I got to play the board, which is kind of rare because it's a very rare board. It's an interesting game. It's kind of the polar opposite of this version of Ibarra. It's very much a cave-style game. Tons and tons and tons of bullets. Scoring is based on grazing and on bullet canceling, and on player-controllable rank. So it's very, very different. But it seems like it would be a lot of fun. But just for going for a clear, it's supposedly quite easy, and people have called it, Ibarra Light, things like that.
Sure. So. Okay, cool. Well, I think that's gonna do it for the episode. Unless you guys have any burning things to still say, any like quacks to get in or anything like that. That was funny. Otherwise,
are there any pressing questions from chat?
It doesn't seem like it. Seems like they're done.
All right.
But yeah, so thanks guys for coming on.
Thanks
really
so much for having us.
I think people are gonna be pleased with this episode. There's been a lot of requests for it, and it's actually been very much so requested. And I was surprised because I didn't quite get what was too appealing about the game, but now I see it's just another one of these Rising games that has all these kind of things, with the range control, various mechanics that all come together to make a really, really good game. And, Ibarra is no exception, and seems to be a really solid experience in general. So, really happy we checked it out. I'm looking forward to trying it again. Just bombing the shit out of the first stage is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Everyone who watches this now is going to be bombing the shit out of the first stage.
Bomba! Bomba!
Bomba!
So thanks to Softdrink and Eaglet. Thank you guys for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me on again, Aquas. It's always a pleasure to be on here. So.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, great. What the fuck?
All right.
Someone gave that.
I don't know, just kind of a closing. Closing
Okay.
message. I personally really wish that this game would see more love. It's a really cool game, and I feel like it's really been kind of pushed to the side by the community. A lot of people are like, "Oh, it's too hard. It's too whatever. I can't see anything in it." Just give it a try. Sit down with it for an hour or two, and if you still hate it, then that's fine. But it's definitely a very, very polarizing game, and if you don't like the Rising style, you won't like it. But there's a lot here to love. And if you are a fan of the Rising games, it's really, you're doing yourself a disservice by not checking it out.
Yeah.
Yep.
It definitely seems to be the case with the Rising games, right away, like, you can get overwhelmed by kind of things that are going on and you don't know what's going on, but once you kind of dip your feet in and you do maybe a little research, definitely going to help you out. These games end up being, very, very good, and definitely really unique to the shooting game genre as well. I mean, there's a reason why people are kind of obsessed about the Rising games, and they appear in the top 25 on the Shmups forum every year. So so that's it. That's gonna do it. So thanks everyone for coming out and bearing with the technical difficulties that we had originally.
Yeah, thank you.
Definitely got it figured out, and that'll do it. All right, so thanks everyone, and take care.